That's like the really peachy one. So super professional entrance.
Yes, meet my friends with Daddy Porter and my esteemed colleague,
Mr. Doug Ziegler. I say Mr. jokingly.
who doesn't know how to do an entrance, but we're working on it.
Yeah.
Neither do I, though. So.
That's part of our charm.
Oh. This is why I keep him around. So I'm having a what is this? Satisfaction Jackson Jr. or something like that for Mail South.
Oh, that's cool.
It's one of those IPA things.
I'm doing something that's the Imperial Chocolate Peppermint Stout from K2 Brewing out of Rochester. So I haven't had this one yet. So,
well, cool, man. So without further ado, we're gonna jump on with my friend here.
Let's do it.
Woodberry. I met him at Fresh Fest. Actually, I hope Nigel remembers how we actually met. But I definitely met him at Fresh Fest. And he was big energy. He was a lot of fun to be around. And he's from Kansas City, a beer place I've never been to. And he knows the lay of the low really well. So a lot of times it's funny because you've never been to the places that we talk to guys.
Sure.
I've never been there too. So we're just going to jump in and find out about what's Kansas City because all I know is Boulevard. And I know that Nigel's, well, I don't know if he's not ready to talk about it, but I know he's got his slate of breweries that are none of them are Boulevard. So.
That's good.
Did you ever have Boulevard though? Quick talk.
I've had several Boulevard beers. Tank 7. I think I've had their Quad. I've had a couple of their beers. We actually get some here, which is weird. But yeah,
the Quad. But just like a lot of regional big breweries. I don't know. We'll ask Nigel here in a second, but I suspect that Nigel has grown out of them, or they're too big for him. And we'll find out in a second here. But because sometimes people are like Bellows. I like Bellows, but they're a little bit too big. I like that small little guy down the corner there, and everybody's like, "Who the hell is that?" You know what I'm saying? So, all right. Well, without further ado, let's bring on my friend Nigel. Nigel,
man.
Gentlemen, what's happening?
What's happening?
Hello. How you doing?
Cheers to you.
I'm good. How are you guys? Hey, cheers to you guys too. There you go.
Great.
What do you have in your glass?
This is, I live a rough life. I have if I go out my door and I go downstairs, there's a brewery right next door to me. It's called Grains and Taps in Lee Summit, Missouri. This is their Key Lime Milkshake IPA. So that I just picked up. It's pretty damn good. I'll be sure to get you guys' address and send you some local stuff from here. Grains and Taps. Yeah, they have a great story. They got a great story. Grains and Taps does. But yeah, I'm keen on my IPAs. Yeah, they do great beers. They're kind of flying under the radar in Kansas City, but people are starting to understand what they're about.
Man, and talk about a voice made for radio, Doug.
Yeah, man.
I listened to so the backstory between me and Nigel is we met at Fresh Fest, but I'm not exactly sure how or where during the whole thing. I don't know if Nigel remembers, but I'm gonna let him chime in. But after we met at Fresh Fest, Nigel started a podcast, and recently. So for research for the show, I wanted to listen to the man's podcast before he comes on and talks about it. So when I listened to it, I was like, I don't remember Nigel's voice being that deep, especially when we talked. But apparently, I don't remember much about where we met at Fresh Fest. Do you remember exactly how we met?
We had a great conversation towards the end of the day with a couple other guys, and I'm pretty sure, like I told people when I went, I probably drank less beer at that festival than any other festival because I was busy yakking, and there was, you know what I'm saying? I drank my fair share, but I didn't really drink a lot. But I think we just stood around and just chopped it up and just talked about beer and all these things. It was how it was, man. It was such a great event. It was so ridiculous.
Yeah, and everybody was so approachable. That's why I'm like, I don't even remember if I walked up to you and you were in a group or you walked up to me.
Right.
I mean, it was just one of those things where it didn't really matter what you looked like, what you were doing. You had a beer in your hand and you just said hi. Like if your eyes met with somebody else, you said hi. and then the conversation started, and then it didn't. I met so many people there, man. Part of doing the show is like keeping up with them, but there's still people that I met there that I'm just like, man, I would love to connect with more.
Yeah, between Facebook, not Facebook, between Twitter and Instagram, I mean, probably I probably have 100 new followers just from that event, easily, because it was so many people.
So Nigel, let's start. I usually we jumped in a little bit. We jumped into a little bit before where I usually like to start. I usually like to start where you tell us about your craft beer history, where you found it, because I believe that you got to find craft beer, not the other way around. But sometimes craft beer does find people. But you have a history. You're not from this country, so I like to hear all this.
Yeah, born and raised in England. Grew up in London. Came here when I was 12. My stepdad was military. First place I came to was Oklahoma. So I lived there for a while. Yeah, I know. I see you're shocked and all right now, right? So yeah, I lived there for quite a bit of time, a couple of times. But I've lived all over because I've worked in media, television, radio, that sort of thing. So I've kind of been all over the country.
All right. And where was the so then so then basically you're basically an American, obviously. I mean, it's not,
technically no. I still have a green card.
Okay.
So
cultural standards and how long you've been here, and so the lay of the land. It's not like you just
yeah. Absolutely.
But so then you were here before your love of craft beer started.
Right.
Where'd you find craft beer? And
well, like I tell people, I'm like, okay, when did the word craft come about? Right. 10 years ago, probably less than that. I mean, back in the day, we were drinking. You remember the Michelobes with the foil?
Yes.
I mean, I think maybe back then the term was premium beer.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, but that would have been craft, because that wasn't Coors or Bud, or I mean, even in high school, we started out drinking Coors Light, but if we wanted to splurge, get some Michelob Dark. Remember Michelob Dark? Michelob Dry.
Red Dog.
Yes.
Red Dog was kind of an offshoot. But it wasn't called craft back then. So.
But Nigel, when are you talking? Are you talking early adulthood, or are you talking like those years before you were legal?
Definitely the years where I was legal.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
The years that I was at, like the years right after I was legal, I wasn't up on your level. I was more Colt 45, Colt Ice, Mickey.
We drank some of that. We probably drank mostly probably Coors Light because it was cheap.
Yeah.
So,
That malt liquor got me more, man, because I figured I could just pound it and it would be
cheap.
less. But yeah, I drank more.
Yeah, I drank more malt liquor as an adult because I had a buddy of mine that worked for an Anheuser-Busch distributorship here in Kansas City in the early 90s, and he would get all the dented cans, and so it was free beer. We didn't care. Four Loko and, all that crap. So, even then, there was no craft beer back then.
Right, and the price
wasn't called craft. I mean, you think about Boulevard, what they started out in 93, we weren't calling it craft back then.
No,
we weren't. That wasn't the term. It was different, but it wasn't called craft.
So what I'm hearing is you were always looking for that like next level of beer. So it was more like a like a tasting. Like I'm looking for more.
Yeah. I think I always liked things that were different. Yeah. I had a.
So you just ready to your mindset was just ready to jump in when.
Yeah, I'm weird like that.
Yeah.
If it's different, I want to check it out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Doug?
So, have you ever had the chance to go back to England?
I actually went. It will be 2 years in August. I went for 2 weeks. Yeah. And as I was telling somebody last night, I really didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
And I just went, and I found breweries and bars, and it was kind of a beer trip, but it was pretty awesome. England has a long history of beer, And it's funny because we think, oh, they don't have all these styles. They have all the styles we have. They just don't import, IPAs and things like that because those things don't travel well. But you can find a lot of American stouts and things like that over there.
Yeah. Plus the pub, like the pub lifestyle is a bit different over there. That's more of it feels more like a neighborhood kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
what I gather. I mean, I'm not English.
Yeah. Most of the pubs are going to be, those beers that are 4% and 5% or whatever. If you want something, quote unquote craft, you're going to have to go find what they have. They have what they call bottle shops, and so you'll walk into a little store, and it'll be a line of coolers with all this craft beer that you can either take to go, or you can pour it there and they'll charge you, I don't know, 50 pence to pour it or whatever. So that's really their main thing. Craft is not really in the pubs and the bars. There's a few, but really it's the bottle shop is the game over there.
Oh, okay.
So, but they got plenty of beer. They got plenty of styles.
Yeah.
But in the pub is, let's get this straight here while we're already. So in the pub is that generally they're just house brews there in the pub?
Sometimes, as the lot, this is what I found. Everywhere you went over England, the ones that were cask or whatever, because there's a lot of cask beer. It's all the same ones. They might have, Heineken or something like that. But yeah, pubs, that's not the place to go discovering new things. It's just all the same stuff.
Gotcha.
But the cask thing was interesting.
Yeah, it's not unlike American bars, though, for the most part. You go to if you go to most regular American bars, like your local joint, most of them are not going to have, craft beer, or like one or two. They're not going to have anything you can really venture out on. So maybe it's not different.
Right. But they definitely have all the styles, and they got some great breweries over there. So I tried to hit as many as I can, and bottle shops too, and met some great people. It was funny because when I first went, there's this group on Facebook, Beer Tasting KC, and I had posted some pictures or whatever. And there's a guy here in Kansas City, he's a British guy. He's like, "Oh, you need to go see this person." So I went to this bar, and they were having a beer release, and they told me to look for Melissa Cole. And come to find out, she's one of the biggest beer writers in England. Met her. They were having a beer release that she collabed on. They bought all my beer. I'd been in London for like 2 days. It's pretty epic. That beer karma.
Yeah. Man, and or no, go.
No, and the funny thing was, one of my buddies, who's a big beer guy here in Kansas City, first time I met her, she asked me if I knew him. I'm like, really? I came all the way to London for her to ask me do I know this guy from Kansas City. I was like, how crazy is that? So
world, right?
Yeah, small world.
Yeah. So, but what was so another part that's kind of a play off of what Greg was saying? Is there? What do you believe was your first like craft beer, a beer that you would say that was a craft beer, and that kind of pushed you towards? You weren't always looking for stuff, but what really kind of flipped the switch for you?
The one that I'll still go back to is Boulevard Pale Ale. So in the early '90s, Boulevard, they're old. They've been around 30-something years. But that was I was never a Boulevard wheat fan. A lot of people like that, but that Pale Ale was something different. I don't think I'd ever had a Pale Ale before until I had that one.
Oh, is that Boulevard unfiltered wheat? Or
that's the same. They've changed the name or whatever. Now they're calling it. Now it's a hazy wheat, but it's the same wheat beer they've been doing for 30 years.
Yeah, well, they gotta market it to people.
Yeah.
Hazy in front of it and just make it seem like it's more marketable.
Because again, when they started, it wasn't called craft beer, even though it was. Because the guy who started Boulevard was a homebrewer, just like the rest of these people who started breweries. So.
Absolutely. So let's jump in on so basically what I'm hearing is, you just grew up with the KCC. Generally when the beer came in and Boulevard's coming in and Nigel was around saying, I want better beer than this nonsense. Did you ever jump in? We've heard through my friends peers, one of the things I've heard was when I asked people, what were you drinking? How did you find craft? and one I think it was Owen Ogletree, or it was me. It was freaking around. One of them said in imports, like we just went import, and we're just like, man, these imports are just like another level of beer.
Right.
Before you got to the KC thing, did you jump? I mean, again, obviously with your history of being an imported guy. Sorry, but keep it like that. Did you ever jump into imports too? During this phase where you were, finding premium beers.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was, Guinness was the thing, Harp, St. Pauli Girl, all those things that you remember St. Pauli Girl, right? You know what I'm saying? All those things that were craft but weren't all craft. So yeah, definitely the imports, Warsteiner and things like that. If you get your hands on them, I was definitely the experimental type. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, did you get a lot of like Sam Adams stuff that way? Because Sam Adams kind of is also one that a lot of people kind of attribute going that way.
I was never really a Sam Adams fan. I've come around since then. That was never really my jam. But since in the last few years, I've got a new appreciation for them because if you get those beers fresh, they're really, really good.
Absolutely.
But in this part of the country, you only get one or two. Like when I went to Pittsburgh, for Fresh Fest, they had a whole array of Sam Adams that you can't even get here. So it was kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon me.
So you're coming up in the craft beer scene in Kansas City, and what is your, if anybody, so Nigel does a podcast, as I mentioned earlier. It's right here, Beers with Nigel Podcast. You can get that. I can show you. He's absolutely on Apple, but I punched you in the Spotify, Nigel. You came right up, and boom, I'm a Spotify guy.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to do that. So I'm pretty sure Nigel will confirm after I'm done yapping here, but I'm pretty sure you can pretty much get it anywhere.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, or Google it; it'll bring up anything.
Yeah.
So, I was kind of prefacing it by saying, like, you came up generally, it seems like, and especially listening to your podcast, a couple episodes, you came up with, the curve of the breweries coming up, and Nigel's house. It feels like you were there, riding that. So, what are your initial impressions of the KC brewery scene? And then we can get into diversity too a little bit if you want to mix that in. But I suspect that's kind of like I suspect it's a kind of issue everywhere. But so yeah, what was your initial reaction coming up with the scene? You mentioned Boulevard, but who else was out there early? And then
this is the thing when you say early, Kansas City beer scene is young. I mean, you got Boulevard 30 years old. The next brewery is probably 7 or 8 years old. That's it. That probably the majority. I've got, I'm in a homebrew club, and the guys who have gone pro out of that club have gone pro in the last 2 or 3 years. So there's maybe 50 something breweries in Kansas City, and probably 90% of them are probably less than 5 years old. So, people think we're saturated. I'm like, well, you need to go to San Diego or Boston or LA or, some of these, Denver. I'm like, no, we've got plenty of room to grow. I mean, just here where I live in suburb of Lee Summit, we've got 4 breweries, and they're all less than 3 years old.
Wow.
So
that is pretty young.
Yeah. So, I mean, and the rest of Kansas City, whether, we debate, what's Kansas City, because you got Lawrence, Kansas, you got up north, you got down south. But none of those breweries, I mean, maybe Lawrence, Free State Brewing in Lawrence, Kansas is 30 years old, but that's not Kansas City. But if you go Kansas City proper in suburbs, the oldest one is Boulevard. The next oldest is probably Martin City. Then after that, Big Rip maybe. But yeah, we're pretty young.
Mm-hmm. Also, you mentioning all those little areas. My wife I lived in Kansas City for a little while, and it's like just nodding her head when you were describing Kansas City.
What part of Kansas City did you live?
Well, that was her first marriage. So she said she lived in a rather, a rather questionable part of Kansas City by Throop.
Troost,
yes.
Yes.
It's been 20 years.
Yeah, she hasn't lived there in 20 years. So
and it still depends on the part of truth. So there's that.
So I'm going to ask some questions from.
Closer to Grandview.
Yeah. You don't want to go to Grandview. No, I'm lying. It's fine.
So I'm going to have some questions later about barbecues. So let's move on.
Okay.
So the question I wanted to ask before that, though, is, Greg mentioned your podcast, and I saw that you have a guy named Nick that you do some of the podcasts with. Is he your regular podcast partner? And if so, how do you guys get to collaborate on that?
Yeah, we were sitting in it downstairs. I'm surrounded by bars and stuff, so there's a little coffee shop down below me, and we were sitting down there having a coffee, if you will. And he's a podcaster anyway, but he does a lot of political and things like that. And we had talked about doing one. He's got a facility which is across the street from me, and I said, "Well, I'll just make you the co-host." And he's kind of the guy that I get to. And I'm sure if you guys have listened to it or watched it, we do mystery beers because he's not really a beer guy. He's more of a whiskey guy. And so, one of the things we do, I bring him beers in brown paper bags, the mystery beers, and he gets to, he gets to taste them and give his tasting notes, if you will. But yeah, he and he's a writer and that sort of thing, and it's been cool because he has a really good studio, and it's been fun to come up with just to do a podcast. I mean, I guess I had nothing better to do, I guess.
Well, the idea of bringing a mystery beer. That's genius.
Yeah.
I'm going to have my wife just go out and buy some and just hand them in a bag and not.
Yeah. He enjoys that.
And as I noted before, you definitely have a voice for radio, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You name it, I've done it, brother. I've done radio. My radio days are over.
So I'm going to have to talk to your podcast partner because whiskey is Scotch specifically is a favorite of mine. So I will.
Well, we'll have to get you guys on ours. So that'll be a little payback. That'll be then we can talk whiskey and beer.
Oh, see, that would be a nice round table.
Well, and back to your point though, Nigel. I'm with you because when I was looking for a podcast partner or a vlog partner myself. I thought Doug would be perfect because he wasn't a beer guy. I wanted that. Actually, I think one of the things that Doug said to me was that I'm not a beer guy. And I was like, that's why I'm talking to you.
Right.
Because I didn't want two beer heads, going, two beer nerds or two beer. I actually wanted someone with the perspective of, no beer. And a lot of our guests want to say, well, I have a beer, but I don't know anything. And I'm like, that's great because again, not everybody is me or you, Nigel, where we geek out on every beer. We want to taste every beer. We're this is where I remember, I don't remember the conversation, of course, but I remember after meeting you that, I felt like you and I were kind of soulmates as far as, the way we looked at beer and the way we, thought about it. So, again, I mean, we might do a really good podcast, but it might be a train wreck because we're both so much alike. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
That's why that's why I love Doug because, again, I tell Doug it's the truth. I bug him more because I don't see much. I want to see more of his Scotch personality in our beer than his beer personality because, again, that's a contrast between it. So I'm just, Doug has a really good point here because you and Nick have a really good rapport, and it works for your podcast, in my opinion, that Nick doesn't know about beer. It works.
Yeah, he knows enough to be dangerous. I always like to, a couple of weeks ago, we did one. Yeah.
Right.
we did one, and a friend of mine gave me these 5-year-old beers from Boulevard, and they may or may not have been good. One was an ale, and one was a stout that probably would survive. So I'm like, you got to open the ale on the podcast. So he opened it and it foamed up, and he was like, oh, it's so bad. But he's my little crash test dummy. So works out perfect.
That's great. But the dynamic works for you guys. It absolutely does. And I will be absolutely listening the way through.
You should be watching, by the way. So, Nick, if you're not watching, that's rude.
Yeah, he's not.
He should be watching. I sent him a link, so he's probably watching.
Right.
He's probably commenting on Twitter because I put it on Twitter. So, oh, sorry. Siri just wants to talk to me. Sorry, I didn't even say Siri.
Right. Doug, you have anything?
Doug, are you awake?
Doug's not there. He's frozen.
Caller, are you there?
So we'll take some comments. Good evening, Tony. How you doing? And Kevin, dudes, what's up, Kevin? So Nigel, back to Kansas City. So you really gave us a good perspective, man. It seems like Kansas City is just like coming up, like
yeah.
So I got two ways I can go with you here. So I'm gonna go this way, and then we'll come back. So this way is the pandemic way.
Yeah.
What is your thoughts on? Again, I don't know. Again, I'm not to kind of keep politics over here and where we're at, like where we're opening and all that, because we're in live stream right now at 5/19/2020.
Right.
People might see this in a couple months, so I kind of want to keep it like relative generally. But how do you feel about the state of craft beer coming out of this pandemic when so many breweries in your area are so young? Like, who, with all due respect to Boulevard, I don't care about them because they should be able to make corporate sponsors. They got big people. I know, again, what the biggie say, more money, more problems.
Right.
In that, but I'm more concerned about the small guys that you're talking about. What was that 80%? These are the guys that you love. I know this because you sent me all these breweries that you wanted me to queue up, and I didn't know what you were talking about. So, where do you, as far as keep it in a pandemic, where do you see how this? I mean, you see a lot of them making it, or where?
I'm kind of on the front lines because I work at 2 breweries, right? And so, when that happened, all of a sudden, you don't go to work because they're closed. To their credit, one of the ones I mentioned to you, Diametric Brewing Company, a shout out to Mac Lampkin. He came up with this. He comes up with crazy ideas because they do really crazy beers. I really got to get you guys a care package and send some of these beers to you guys because they're ridiculous. So Matt came up with this Together We Can event, and basically he recruited breweries to bring their beers to the brewery, and we did a to-go event. And so, so it started out with 7 breweries, 10 weeks ago, and it was kind of a shit show because we just had people pull up and order beer. That was kind of a shit show. So we did them every 2 weeks. The next 2 weeks we did online ordering, so they started ordering at 5 p.m. on Thursday. Then you'd come pick up your beer between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. on Saturday. So the second event, I think we did about $28,000 in beer, 500 orders.
Wow.
A month ago, we did $34,000, over 500 orders. We just did one on Saturday. We had 22 breweries from Kansas and Missouri.
Wow.
And I think we did, maybe just almost $30,000. So it was a brilliant event to do that. So all these breweries are closed. But they could at least, get their beers to go, and then you're exposing these breweries to people who may never get them. So imagine you go online, and you've got 20 breweries to pick from.
Yes.
That you may never ever go to because they're all across Kansas City.
Yes.
And so it's been a brilliant event. I think going forward, it's going to be something that they do occasionally. Like it's basically a beer farmers market. You come to one place to get all those beers, and we literally had people. The last 2 events, we had these people come from Arkansas.
What?
They spent $900 on beer each time. Yeah.
How far is Arkansas?
I think they probably came maybe 3.5 hours, 4 hours.
Right. You got to cross the whole state, I think, right?
Yeah. You're down south. So the people,
that's a small town.
And the cool thing about it, all the breweries get the money from the beers. But the nice thing has been people have been tipping heavy. Okay. I mean, this past Saturday, it was nothing for somebody to get their beer and tip $100 because it's all going back to the people who are not working, right? You know, because most of these breweries right now, even we're in the phase 1 of reopening. You know what I'm saying? It's still tough for those breweries. So, you know, thankfully, nobody has said they're going out of business because the to-go game has been pretty good because Kansas City people, they like their beer, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
Well,
that beer farmers market idea, like Tony said, that is badass.
Yeah.
I wish we had that
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
wow.
And on a personal level, I don't really keep beer because I work at breweries, right? And I go to breweries. But I have so much beer in my refrigerator right now only because I'm buying it to support the cause, right? But you know, it's kind of cool to look at my fridge and be like, what can I drink today? So,
And since time means nothing right now, you could literally grab a beer any time of day and it'd be fine.
I mean, to my left is my work computer because I'm working from home, and I live in a loft, so you know I'm kind of trapped.
Yeah. I swear to you, Nigel, if you would see the like my wife and I had decided that it's time to do a lot of outside projects that we kept putting off. So like it's just been like me and her, we work and then we take lunch and we go out and we work out in the yard and then we come back work and then after dinner we work outside and it's just like that's the only way we can get really out.
Yeah.
But we have a yard, so like being in a loft is a completely different beast. So
yeah, I can't get away from my job. Thankfully, I walk to work, so I work for a city hall, and so there's some things I can't do at home. So at least I go down there and do some things there. So you know that at least I can get outside. But you know, where I live is a suburb not far from Grandview, Lee Summit, and I live in downtown Lee Summit. So the street where I live, you know, like I said, I've got 4 breweries within walking distance. I don't know how many bars and restaurants. So it's been weird when everything's closed because after 7 p.m. it's been a ghost town.
Crickets. Wow.
Yeah.
So where do you? So I asked you about where you think Kansas City beer is, and you're telling me, and what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of support, and people are doing what they can to support them. Do you think a lot of them are going to make it through?
You know, at this point, just kind of looking around and seeing what's happening. I think everybody's good. I think, like I said, I think the to-go game has been, you know, people have been. I mean, when we get 500 orders, you know, from people, and okay, some people might buy a 4-pack, but most people are probably spending, you know, $100 on beer. So it seems like the support is there, and there's been a lot of other events that people are doing to help, you know, people who work in bars and you know, at breweries and things like that. So
my friend Tony is jealous of you, Nigel. I just got to say.
Tony, I'll hook you up, buddy. I'll hook you up.
Yeah, I am too. I was like, man, 4 breweries you can just walk to. That's a variety. And you're right. I would never have a beer in my house ever. You're right.
Yeah, generally I don't, you know, because what's the point?
There isn't any.
yeah, some of us aren't that fortunate.
Unless you want a cellar. You know what I mean? Doug's a cellarer. You know, even I'm not one of those guys that you know, some people, you know, cellar the beers. I'm not that guy. And even if I buy beer, generally I'm going to share it. You know, if I buy a 4-pack, if I drink one, I might be lucky. I mean, like I told you, I told Alpha Beer Check, I'm like, DM me your address. I'll just send you some beer. Well, what do you want for it? I'm like, no, I'm just going to send you some beer. I'm going to show you some Kansas City love. You know what I'm saying? So I have no problem with that. All right, I got you. I'll slide in your DMs right after this.
Me too. I'll send you some New York State stuff if there's anything up here you want.
Oh, is that where you are, Doug?
Yeah, up by Binghamton. Yeah. So okay. From there. So I got all the New York State stuff comes to me. And it's weird. You were mentioning Boulevard. I actually get quite a bit of Boulevard up here, which is surprising.
Yeah, they're all over now. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
like,
actually.
Yeah,
I was actually.
Expected.
Yeah, I was actually right before the COVID started, the Rona. I went to Other Half Brewing's Pastry Town, that beer fest. That was so it's all pastry stouts, pastries, and wrestling.
And wrestling?
Yes, this is the most ridiculous thing ever. It's so fun.
So my question is, was it like professional wrestlers, or they were having people getting drunk and wrestling?
No. That's a liability there. There's no insurance for that. Okay. No, it was literally they had, New York State Wrestling Association or whatever it's called. They had them come in, and every half hour they would have a match, and people would come with their beers. It was a super unique beer festival. That was literally March 6th, right before everything got shut down.
Doug, what'd you say?
I'm going to say that I'm not a wrestling fan, but that just sounds freaking stupendous. I'd love to do
that.
I would love.
Do yourself a favor and go to their page. I think it's on Facebook or one of them. And they've got a highlight video. It's so ridiculous.
I would absolutely love it. So I got a serious question for you, Nigel. You ready for it?
I've got a serious answer.
All right. So if the economy stays slow, don't you worry. Those $100 on beer will become 40 and then zero.
Repeat that question, sir.
I don't know if you can see it on the bottom there.
One more time.
Can you see it on the bottom there?
Oh, let me get the readers, man. I'm old.
Hey, me too, dude. That's why I keep putting my glasses on and off.
We put the readers on.
I don't know. I just think beer people are beer people. They're good. I mean, at least here they're going to support, and they like their beer. I mean, I know, I'm that guy where last weekend at the event, I'm like, I'm not going to buy any beer. What did I do? There was a new brewery there. I'm like, I don't have their beer. I'm going to buy their beer.
Yeah.
So I think beer people are, we're kind of weird that way. I mean, if you've never had it, it's like, that FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
So I was like,
our casual beer drinkers going to be priced out if things don't change soon. Possibly, I'll take this one. Possibly, but also though, there's this. It is so complicated though, because obviously people don't have money here, but people aren't spending money like we normally did, whether it be just haphazard, random food, or your friend just calls you, Nigel, and you're home, and your friend's like, I'm over at this brewery. You're like, all right, well, it's only 8:00, so there's there goes $75 maybe that you're just going to spend that you didn't even think you were going to. And Americans are really, really, in my opinion, generally we're flippant this way. There's some people who aren't, but generally we are. If our friend calls us on Friday night, we'll go out to dinner. We don't even give a shit. So my point is that there are things where we're not spending on because we're not just haphazardly going out, or we don't have our friends just randomly calling us, or we don't have that beer event that I wasn't going to go to.
Right.
And now I feel like it because my friend was like, "Oh man, did you have Giant Jones's wheat wine?" No, well, you better get down here and have it. So then I'll be like, you know what I mean? So I'm not sure, man. It's complicated. Obviously, people not having money is.
Well, to answer that question about the casual beer drinker, craft beer is still a niche. Most of my friends do not drink craft beer. Most of my friends don't drink craft beer. And don't get me started on the brothers that I know. They're not drinking craft beer.
Oh, I'll get there in a second. But go on.
You know what I'm saying? I got some, but most of my friends do not drink craft beer.
Right.
So it's still a small niche. Most people are still drinking, Bud Light, Coors, whatever. Now if I get them to a brewery, I'm gonna have to coach them up on something. Or if somebody comes into the brewery and is like, I don't like craft beer. Well, I'm gonna have to coach them up and get them something that's close to what they're used to, but then, kind of wean them away and get them to realize, this is kind of like Bud, but better. It's a different type of lager, right?
Yeah.
So.
Our friend Daniel says, you can't see it because you don't have your spectacles on, but he says that the footage he saw from Pastry Town was crazy. He couldn't go get the kids. So yeah,
It's literally one of the top 3 beer festivals I've been to. Easily.
Tony wants me to tell you that he will swap.
Greg's hopping into, or Tony's hopping into.
Right. My friend Tony said he will swap beer with you.
I see that. We can do that.
Carolinas, I believe,
He's
right?
in South Carolina, so you got that for you.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that we get up there, but
Well, the thing I like about sending beer from here is that, like, I sent you that list of breweries. You're like, who?
Yeah.
And they're all really good. That's the thing. So I love to share the wealth of, like, you don't think Kansas City can do anything, but I've got some really good. Literally, the homebrew group that I'm in, ZZ Hops. That's the name of it.
ZZ Hops.
See what I did? Yeah?
That was awesome.
Yeah. So
yeah, my last name's Ziegler, so it's like ZZ, baby. That's what I'm easily amused because I'm 12 mentally. So yeah.
I'm 14, so there's that. So literally out of that group, and there's been 6 guys who have gone pro in the last 3 years who have opened breweries.
Wow.
Now, we're talking about guys in the group that I've known for years, like Windshift, the brewery I work at. Tony, you go to Tony's house, and he'd have 7 taps coming out of a wall. So he needed to go pro. And he'll be open a year this weekend, and he's literally easily top 3 breweries in Kansas City, easily. People, like the beer event that we had, as soon as his beer goes on sale at 5:00 on Thursday, it's gone in an hour and a half.
Wow.
Every time. Yeah, it's serious. He's a really good brewer.
So the question if I can pose a question here about your homebrew club with the, is it just that by word of mouth that they get the opportunity, or is it someone like, I'm just going to open my brewery because I'm doing this at home and this is awesome, but I want to do it. And
yeah,
share it more.
A lot of what's happened in Kansas City, because there's 3 major homebrew clubs in Kansas City. They get known because there's this cool thing about Kansas City. Some of the beer festivals, there's professional brewers and home brewers, and so you as a consumer get to experience some of the things you're like, oh, that's a homebrew, right? And so the word of mouth spreads about those people who are doing these beers, and a lot of people either get seed money or do a GoFundMe or all these sorts of things. I mean, a great example on the Kansas side is Service Brewing, Courtney Service. It's the only female-owned brewery in Kansas City. I used to chase her down at festivals to find her beer. And she finally went pro just about a year ago, and she's just killing it. I mean, she did her goal was to do 100 different beers in a year. She did probably 140.
Greg, you know who that sounds like? That sounds like my homies down at the North Brewery here. The North Brewery in 3 years has done over 500 different styles.
Wow.
They're crazy. So I get it. You see somebody that's really going out, really going out there on the edge. And I want to support that. I want to see people stretch themselves and try to see what they can do.
Right.
See that.
Right.
And
so the beer scene, they've got a lot of innovators here, a lot of people who are doing crazy things that you'd be like, that's a beer. Like one of my favorite ones, they just came out with Diametric last weekend. It's called Oh My Bad, because the beer was going to be one thing and it didn't work out, so it turned into something else. So it was like, "Oop, my bad," and then they put the labels on upside down. So that's the kind of things that Diametric does. They're just all over the place with different styles. I mean, they do meads as well. They did an IPA mead that was ridiculous.
That is
even a style.
Hoppy mead. Wow.
Yeah, it was good.
That sounds super interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mead is so traditionally sweet that it's like adding the hops into that would be super interesting.
Yeah.
So Nigel, let's get into the ever complicated issue of diversity, craft beer, and it's complicated. And I think you hit on it a little bit. So I kind of want to just like spark that and just let you roll, because I've heard you talk about this on your podcast, and this man over here could talk about diversity in beer without even taking a breath. And half an hour later, you'll be schooled. You remind me of my friend Tony Two Pint and April that we had on Friday. When Tony talks diversity, I shut up and listen. And that's kind of how I deal with it. Yes, I'm a black man. Yes, I deal with the issues that everybody does. But she just has a way of articulating it in a manner that is forceful. And I don't know. Sometimes I kind of, sometimes me personally kind of hit it around the edges. Tony. Right. And she hits the right notes for me, because I'm a guy who struggles hitting those right notes. There are times where I can be forceful about it and all that, but I just struggle. So I don't know. I don't know if we'll tell everybody, because I've heard your podcast a couple times and we've talked. Actually, I remember us talking about this specifically.
Right. Yeah. It always comes up.
Yeah. I want to know, if, your view as a black man, in Kansas City beer scene and all that.
Well, the thing for me is it's beer in Kansas City is white and male. Now there's a lot of females in the Kansas City beer scene that drink beer. But my goal has always been, especially after going to Fresh Fest and seeing all those black folks drinking craft beer, because that's unusual. You know what I'm saying? That was like going to Mecca. I remember going to Fresh Fest and going to the symposium, because I did the VIP, because that's what I do. And I show up to the hotel with my bag, just Ubered straight from the airport, got into that symposium, and I've never seen that many black people in craft beer in every capacity, whether they be brewers, drinkers, owners, hop farmers, whatever, right? And so, after going there and coming back to Kansas City, I'm like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not supposed to be. I've kind of been a beer ambassador in Kansas City anyway, but I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be diversifying this shit, right? And so that's been, my goal is to, introduce, because the whole thing is people think, oh, craft beer is racist. I don't think it is. I think it's a matter of exposure. I've just been exposed to it, and a lot of people in Kansas City have no clue that there's, 6 or 7 breweries in their backyard. And to that point, when Afro Beer Chick, did her I Am Craft Beer event. So shout out to my girl Alana Broyles, who is 311 KC. She put together one of those events here in Kansas City at one of the breweries. And shout out to Rochester Brewing for hosting it. We had 125 people show up, and we had a panel. We talked about diversity. We talked about women having issues in tap rooms and things like that. And so there's definitely support for it, because my brewer friends here in Kansas City, I was like, hey, if I can put together an event that maybe in a community or a place where they don't know about craft beer, what will you do? And all of them was like, we'll give you beer to do that, because ultimately, if we bring more people of whatever into it, it's good for craft beer, but it's also good for your bottom line. So everybody's missing money by not having Latino, Black, Asian, women, or whatever in these breweries. But I will say Kansas City is represented well by women, because if you ever get a chance to come to Kansas City, Boulevard's beer hall is a wonder to see. It's beautiful. I mean, it's just awesome. Once they got bought up by Duvel, they got that money, so they did this beer hall. It's beautiful.
I didn't know they got bought out by Duvel.
Yeah, Duvel, Omegang. Yeah, that's why. Yeah. So
Omegang's 70 miles from my house.
Yeah. So that tourist and recreation center downstairs in the Museum of Craft Beer. You go upstairs. It's got that giant beer hall, and most of the time when I go in there, there's 75% women always. So Kansas City has a lot of beer drinking women, but there ain't no brothers up in there. I'll be the only one. Well, but, I'm one of those people, and as you know, when it comes to making, people talk about making it safe or making it welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a different country and I have a different perspective. And so I can walk into a place and really don't even think about it. Do I notice it? Of course I do. Do I worry about it? No. But I'm a different guy, and not everybody's like that. And what I've done, at least talking to my friends who own breweries, I know they're busy making beer and trying to stay afloat and things like that. But there has to be at some point where they say, okay, how can we get more diverse crowds in here? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, the question is, who's it on? Is it on the brewer? Is it on the customer? Who's it on? I think it's on everybody. It's on us. It's really comes down to us as black dudes, to hip our friends to it. White guys already know, which is fine. Love my white people.
No, and it's true. And you said something really key that I think some people need to hear. How about that? Some people, not everybody. Which is, if you're pushing for diversity, you're not saying that the industry is racist. So these two aren't.
Yeah.
But some people equivocate that and say, "Oh no, we're not saying that. We're just saying that people don't, the outreach isn't there." And also, again, as and Tony has a little interesting point. So I do not get why black people would not like craft beer, and I couldn't agree more. And
it's exposure,
right? And after going to Fresh Fest, you really see again, especially as a black person like you, who generally doesn't drink with black people like me, when you go to Fresh Fest, it's just a different. I can't really even explain it. I'm a man of 1,000 words, and when it comes to Fresh Fest, sometimes I just lose my words because I just can't explain to you the feeling that it was. It was just almost like a verification. Be like, oh yeah, there are black people who like beer, and there are a lot of them. So it's not like, you know what I mean? So our anecdotal evidence or our perspective, Nigels, especially since I generally grew up. I was born and raised in Philly, but my mother got me, quote, out of there when I was 8 or 7. And I lived the suburban life. I lived my majority of my life around white people. So like you, man, I go in the breweries. I didn't care. I didn't see it, didn't care. I'm there for the beer. I'm not really there. But more and more, I believe the industry is hurting because they're not able to reach out to more and bigger demographics. More and bigger demographics give them more reach, gives them more money, and ultimately places them a lot better than the big beer people who, again, big beer got black people's money, so there's no question on that one. And I think a lot of it is representation, and that's why Fresh Fest is important, and that's why it's really important for us to know that there are breweries who are black owned, and there are it's just not a white man's game, damn it, and it's great. And again, nothing wrong. The white man's doing beer pretty fucking well. We had 70,000 beers. 70,000 beers from 7,000 breweries before the pandemic. Yes, we're going to have less after that. But ultimately, having a more diverse playing field plays, especially in this industry. I mean, think about the growth level. If we have women too, and you said it, man. Women are playing the craft beer game. Woo, pretty hot. And if you count seltzers and the women who like seltzers, because women drink, I'm on a rant here, man. Women drink smarter than men do. That's what Julia Hurst taught me. Women drink smarter than men. Women are smarter. They are they drink with their weight in mind. They drink with calories in mind. They drink with you know what I mean? There's a little bit more mindfulness than me just going out with you, Nigel, on a Friday night and putting down like 6 fucking flights and shit. Like I would do just mindless, man. I wouldn't even think about, oh, this is gonna make my boobs bigger or this is gonna make me fatter. I don't care. But a woman is like, no, I'm gonna have a couple beers or I'm just gonna have a beer and a shot. So women are smarter, smarter. So anyway.
You haven't met my Kansas City beer friends. ladies.
Oh, okay.
It is not a game out here, son.
But you know, a lot of the seltzer people, what the thing that they say is,
yeah, I get it.
Calories and its taste, and so I don't, it's a complicated thing because you're right, man. It's hard for me to bring in my black friends that I have here to craft beer. It's hard for me to be like, hey, let's go to a brewery and let's go, and they're like, you like crazy beers, man. Crazy.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to exposure. If you're not exposed to it in an environment where, maybe, you go to a party or to, somebody's house, that sort of situation. If you're not exposed to it, how the hell are you going to know? You're not going to roll up into a brewery unless you're somebody like me or you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, can I say, as the token white guy in the show,
you are not token. You matter.
But I want to make the point that it's also on folks like me to help open those doors, because we're the ones with all the privilege. We're the ones that have a shit ton of options. Hey, why don't you go try this with me? And be it female, black, Latino, Asian, LGBTQ, it doesn't matter.
Right.
People, just like exposing people to just the awesomeness that craft beer can be, and just having folks try different stuff. I think that we could do a much better job of that. It's easy for me to go into a brewery because fucking 95% of people there look like me most of the time. So I never have to think about it. But I also have doing the show with Greg and having all these folks on from Fresh Fest. I was super looking forward to Fresh Fest because I want to go somewhere where, like, I've been to a million beer festivals, but none of them where I'm not the primary person that's normally there.
Right.
So I want to go and I want to see that. I want to be part of that. I want to help expand that. So, like, I think we as white people can do a whole lot better job of exposing folks.
And I think it's hard. And I have this conversation with my brewery friends, and like Windshift, where I work. It's a small brewery. He brews damn near 5 days a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he does a lot of social media and things like that. But that's a hard ask to say, okay, you need to do outreach, and he does a lot of great social service things. But they also need to have the avenue to say, okay, I want to do this, but where do I go? Who do I talk to? How do I promote it in this space? And I think, going forward, as kind of like what Diametric did with this Together We Can thing, that everybody came together to make this happen. Maybe it's a concerted effort on all the breweries around to say, okay, what can we do to expose this to other folks, and do something like that where it's not on one brewery, or it's almost like a for lack of a better term, a committee to say, what can we do to make this happen, and then come up with a plan. And you go to these events, neighborhoods, spaces where there's no craft beer, and you give the shit away just as to expose them to it. Because like I said, I've got plenty of breweries that are like, you want some beer to take and do whatever? Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So how do you help those breweries reach out into communities where craft breweries have not really had a foothold yet, but you think, hey, if I expose people to it, they're going to come? How do you?
I had plans before the Tenderona came along. I really did. Yeah, I mean, I really had. I've got some people who work in radio, and know certain places where craft beer is not represented, or they do events where it's a party or whatever. And I could, that my plan was to say, okay, I'm going to, get in with them and make this part of the experience. You know what I'm saying? So that's, once this ends, that's the goal, is to, because like I said, we did that whole I Am Craft Beer event, and me and Alana, we're kind of on the same page, and Woody Bonds, and we know what to do, but again, we've been put on hold with this, right? So, but this
Sorry, I'm not sure. We missed the last part of that, Nigel. Could you repeat that?
Which part? What part would you hear last?
Oh, no. Greg, did you it just kind of pause for a second? On my part, maybe it didn't for you, but.
No, I mean, like I said, I've got plans to, get into some of these events where I know people who host things that, whatever, and just bring some craft beer and expose people to it. And here's some samples, because you can give away all the beer you want, really.
Yeah.
One of the things I was working on, Nigel, actually was I was working with a few breweries here, actually, to put on a couple events for Juneteenth. Is a great event that I think that a lot of breweries and maybe we could talk on the side, but actually I had a Juneteenth. I had all kinds of stuff going on, but I had to shelf it all because obviously COVID and none of that's going to go down. But I absolutely, I reached out to. I mean, you can tell too, Nigel, the breweries that are willing to, the breweries that want to work and be more diverse. In fact, it's really, really plain and clear here in Madison which ones do, and I'm not saying which ones don't, but you can tell which ones do. And we got some really nice ones. But Juneteenth was one I was going to jump off on, and I approached these breweries and I just told them that that these are ways to show people of color and people of minorities that you are I don't like the word woke. You are I do like the word woke, but not for this context.
Right.
You are working with minorities. You are aware. You are aware. Those things. So it's not just gonna we're not gonna have a Juneteenth event. We might have 3 Black people show up. It's not really about that. It's about the branding, and it's about continuing to do it and starting somewhere. And these are things that you can, it doesn't say, hey, Black people can drink our beer. But what it does say is that we're aware of, we're aware of social things that you guys care about. And Juneteenth is something that Black people care about, but not many people really understand it. But once a Black person knows about Juneteenth, they're pretty much all on. And again, that's just a hat tip. So I don't know if I don't know, where you want to talk about as far as, making events like this. And ultimately that's kind of, a help.
Well, yeah, you're right on the same page I am, finding events where you can go in and say, hey, this is in your neighborhood. This is right around you. Because, where Boulevard is in Kansas City, there's 1, 2, 3, 2 or 3 other breweries right there. And technically, that neighborhood is Latino and mostly Latino, but like I asked one of the newer breweries, Alma Mater, right around the corner from Boulevard, literally right in the heart of the Latino part of town. I'm like, you ever have Latinos coming here? He's like, every once in a while, and he's, so there's obviously some room for growth there. And again, I don't think it's his fault. But we need to find as a beer community to find those spaces where we can say, okay, here's what we have. This is in your backyard. This is down the street from your house.
Maybe they don't know how to reach out. That's the thing, is it? I doubt breweries would not want to reach out. I think they'd want to expand and have a multitude of folks joining them.
Yeah, there's not a brewery in Kansas City that doesn't want that. And I know most of the brewers and the people, they're all about, because it's really, the Kansas City beer community is pretty damn, I was going to say bitching. Nobody says bitching anymore, but
they're old. It's okay. You can say bitching to us.
I just went 80s on you. It's bitching, man.
That's how old I am.
So you understood what I said, Doug. So that's good.
I did.
Awesome.
So I got one last question for you, Nigel. We usually try to keep it about an hour. We try to keep it concise and quick. But so my last question for you is someone who is clearly in touch with breweries. Clearly, you are on the pulse of what's going on there. Can you tell everybody who's watching some quick tips on how they can help their breweries during this time? Tip
heavy. Buy the beer and tip. Buy merchandise. I mean, whatever you can do, whatever they're selling, buy it. I mean, hell, I went next door when this first all went down, they have they do cocktails as well, but they got to the point where they were like, we need to sell the bottles. So I bought me a couple of bottles of liquor. I don't really buy bottles of liquor, but you're trying to support the cause. Like I said, right now my refrigerator is full of beer. I refuse to even look at my bank account over the last 3 months because the amount of beer that I bought is gaudy, I'm sure. Not to mention the amount of beer that I drank. So yeah, I mean that's how you support. You just support local. Just buy the beer, man.
Okay.
Buy the beer, and then also one. This is kind of a different thing. Mm-hmm. Is that what I like to do? Like I told you, I like to take the local beer and send it to places that people have never heard of it, and then it gets them some love around the country. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I've got people hit me up all the time. Can I get some of that Windshift key lime pie? Because that's his hottest beer right now. You can't keep it inside because it's fire. I've got one can in my refrigerator right now. I could probably get $20 for it. But I would never do that. I would share. It'd be one of those things. I wouldn't drink it myself. I'll be like, hey, let's share this or whatever. So that's another thing you can do because the more you can expose these smaller breweries, then somebody's gonna be like, whoever's watching tonight or whatever, like, man, I need to go to Kansas City. It sounds like it's jumping off. Right. And sometimes you never know. I mean, I've gone to cities. You're like, what the hell, right? So support local, but also send local out.
Send local. That's a great.
Don't send it through the mail because that's illegal. Wink, wink.
Yep. You send it like people send weed. Nobody knows you're sending it, but you're actually sending it.
I'm sending salad. It's
salad. It's oregano. That's okay.
It's hops. It's hops. I'm sending you some hops.
That's a
couple comments here, and then Doug wants to jump into some food here. So Canadian Fisher says a lot of us are right here with you about the purchasing beer front.
And the dipping for sure.
I can absolutely do that. So our friend Beer Days jumped in late. He said, Nigel, you're KC, sorry to join late. You're with Windshift?
Yeah, I work at Windshift, yep.
Beer Days has been part of that.
And Diametric as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Dan calls those yeast samples, folks. When you're shipping them?
He calls them yeast samples? Nice.
Right.
I mean, technically that's what it is, yeah.
Right. Right. So, Doug, you want to jump in on some?
Yeah. So I'm going to jump in on because my wife lives in Kansas City and has very definitive opinions on barbecue.
Okay.
So again, my wife hasn't lived there in like 19 or 20 years. So because I asked her, and I didn't realize you were in Kansas City because I had listened to your podcast, but hadn't realized where you were. So maybe me not paying attention as much as I would have. But she was talking about she liked Jack Stack and Gates Barbecue. What are the barbecue places you prefer?
Gates is fine. That's a kind of a staple here. Jack Stack, it depends on which one you go to because it depends on the age of the smoker. That's a true statement.
I know she likes to burn ends from Jack Stack. That's
those are good. I'm not really, if I'm going to. Really, my jam right now is a buddy of mine, and it's kind of an undercover barbecue place. It's called Jazzy B's. It's on the east side of town here, and he does a different style barbecue. He's a really good guy. He does some crazy things. I also like used to be called Oklahoma Joe's. Now it's called Joe's, but you got to go to the one that's in the gas station.
In the gas station. Wow.
Yeah, it started in the gas station. Now it's a full scale restaurant. I think they still have gas. I think you can still get gas when you get your barbecue. So there's that.
Man, they
multi-service. That's great.
Yeah. So those are kind of my two go-tos. Other people will say some of these other places, but yeah, it's like it's like breweries.
Yeah,
if you're gonna get
your favorite.
But I try not. I'm not the type of person to say, "Well, this is my number one." Now, I might give you a top 3 or top 5. So let's go. Joe's, Jazzy B's. There's another one up at the brewery. up in north side of town, Jousting Pigs, which is pretty fire. And then there's another one at Crane Brewing, Heart Barbecue, which you should just Google Heart Barbecue sometime. That guy does some Texas barbecue that's out of this world. Yeah, right here in Kansas City. Shout out to Tyler Hart, my dude.
No,
Sorry, I went on a little food rant there, Greg.
That's cool. You're good.
No, I was about to Google that, and I was like, nope, I'm just going to end this stream and move on because I can't get any, and I'm hungry.
Because, yeah.
Greg, you need a care package.
Right, I need some
beer and barbecue.
I need
put on some dry ice. You'll be good to go, son.
Yeah, some curbside barbecue. Right.
There you go.
All right, Nigel, it's been fantastic.
Nigel, this has been awesome. Thank you for being
on. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Like I said, I'm going to return the favor, but I'll be in touch with you guys. But I really want to send you guys some beer from here for real.
I want to send you some too, so that's going to be returned as well.
Yeah, let's talk. We're going to make that happen
for sure.
And then I'd like to have you back in the fall or early year when we can kiss this goodbye and you can talk more about Kansas City. But I wanted to thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to make sure people knew about you?
No, just that's cliche. Stay safe.
There you go.
Look, drink local.
Yeah, drink local and stay safe.
And while we're doing cliches, we're all in this together.
In these uncertain times.
Yeah. Hey, thoughts and prayers.
Nigel, thanks for your time, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Take care.
Peace.
Peace.
So, another great guest, Doug.
That was great.
How you doing?
I'm tired and sunburnt. It's great.
Oh, that means at least you're getting out. So,
I told you I've been doing like lawn projects for 3 days in a row, and I'm going to tell you, I sent you pictures, man. That stuff turned out great, but it's a shit ton of work.
Man, at least you're exercising a little bit and getting out.
Yeah, it's not making my stomach any flatter, but it's definitely exercise. So yeah.
Yeah, this whole pandemic thing is not good for that. I was doing good for a couple weeks, and now
I was not doing good from the start. I just eat all the things.
Man, I say I was doing good because I wasn't like anxiety eating and drinking, but that's
by the wayside now.
Yeah, we're kind of past that shit. So
yeah, I get modes where I'm like, I'm gonna drink everything that night, and then the next day I'm like, why the fuck did I drink all that stuff? And then I'm not gonna drink for a day or two.
Right.
It's just a weird little thing. So yeah.
Well, tomorrow I'm talking to John Francis, founder of Father's Eve.
Yeah, I wish I could be on that, but I got to work, so unfortunately I can't. But
yeah, he's built up a Father's Eve empire there, so it's gonna be fun talking to him. Taking a slower week this week. Last week was
last week was American Craft Beer Week. We had to be on top of everything last week, so yeah.
But I'm working on some good ass guests for next week, man. So we have some good ass ones this week, man, Nigel and.
Yeah, we have some good ones coming. Friday and
Friday we have some people we don't, or you know who can we say?
We're working on that.
Okay. Hey man, we have good guests, and if we don't, we can just talk.
And it's going to be fun, and it's going to be great because it's always fun, man. You're a great host. And I'm happy to be here with you.
Well, we're co-hosts, so don't put all that shit on. But also, anyway, so you guys got me hungry at the end of this podcast, so I'm gonna go get my dessert. So I will see you guys tomorrow at noon, and then we'll see you on Friday, Doug.